I will give you a sketch of life at the Indiana School for the Blind in the 1950s, but I want to preface that by saying that that's light years away, pretty much comparing the Dark Ages to the modern ages, and the examples I give were true then, but I think fairly quickly, even in the 1960s, those differences disappeared, thank goodness. Example. In the first place, there was no parent-teacher organization. And my folks kept running into two other couples who kept bringing their kids back to school about the same time every Sunday evening. He said, well, let's go have coffee and talk about our common experiences as the parents of visually impaired kids. And they decided, well, the school needs a parent-teacher organization. So they talked to some teachers, and he said, you bet. Well, my mother was, to put it politely, an assertive person. So she was nominated to go over to the administrative wing on a Sunday afternoon and let the administrators know that if they were interested, they could attend the meeting that night of the parent-teachers organization. And they said, we don't have a parent-teachers organization. And she said, you do now. And that was the organizational meeting of that group, which had not existed before. Oh, the canteen. Let's talk about the canteen. Kids, at that age, we all loved them. Candy bars, Cokes, chewing gum. Our only source for that kind of stuff was when the kids who were partially sighted would walk across a large campus, cross a busy street, cross a railroad track, and go to a gas station and buy Cokes and candy bars and chewing gum. And some of the parents decided that wasn't really safe, and that wasn't really the way to go. So they established a canteen so that we could buy the stuff there. And some of the students worked in the canteen and sold the other students the candy bars and stuff. However, there was sexual segregation. And the example of the canteen and the huge playground, lots of stuff, equipment on the playground, there were boys' days and girls' days. And in the canteen, of course, you know what happened. When it was girls' days, we'd go out in the hall and say, hey, Susie, could you go in and get me a Hershey bar and a Coke? And on boys' days, Susie would say, hey, Byron, could you get me a Coke and a Hershey bar? On playground, of course, there was no way to share that. The only time that a brother and sister, siblings, could get together was in a supervised public waiting room. That's how tight the sexual segregation was. They never could figure out how some of the older junior high and high school girls got pregnant, but the segregation continued for years and years and years. The residential school setting was certainly the way to go in the 1950s and 1960s. And since I was not separated from my family, I went home every weekend, and I only did not come home 7 weekends out of the 5 years. And on one weekend each year, we were asked to stay at the school for the Indianapolis Star Fund Christmas party and dance. I do know that there were fellow students who lived at the school and only went home because the family had to let them come home because the school was closed. Only at Christmas break or Easter break, or certainly summer break, were they able to go home. I won't call it a dumping ground. All I know is that most of the students didn't go home. Life after class in the 1950s was interesting. We pretty much had to do things on our own. We listened to a lot of radio soap operas, not as much physical activity as there might have been or maybe should have been. Yes, we did have a wonderful playground with lots of equipment and all kinds of things to play on. But lots of playing cards, lots of reading, both before and after supper. The rooming situation at the Indiana School for the Blind and the 50, at least for the guys, was 2 or 3 guys to a room. And certainly that was true in the 2 dormitories I lived in. I never lived in the older boys' dormitory, but I assume it was the same. Reading was rather important. I figured out, my 5th grade year especially, that you can read Braille through bed sheets. Bed sheets are thin, and you can read Braille. So I would be reading, and I would hear the house mother on night patrol. And when she was approaching our room, I would just rest my hand quietly on my book, which was under the covers, under the sheet, until she got to the end of the hall, and I would resume reading. So then, of course, I would pull the sheet back and read directly, but when I needed to, I could read Braille through the sheet. I read a lot of books my 5th grade, because I was just a voracious reader. I read lots of westerns and lots of biographies, and I was a real good reader.